Superman's the most popular comic book icon, and yet it's arguably been almost half a century since last time they got him right on film. I do enjoy Returns, but that's kind of a lonely experience. 2 decades is also more than enough for a sea of diverging opinions to form in regards to what a Superman movie should be like, what it should look and feel like, what it should do. Me, I wouldn't mind a good film, and that can take any shape or form. Every attempt made after my birth year so far has been directed by a filmmaker whose work I grew to connect with. I grew up on the OG X-Men films. Snyder was one of the few names I learned to track down via style. I do agree that being offered a Superman movie project should require having successfully dabbled in the subgenre prior, whether it's by redefining it for the new millennium, setting an aesthetic milestone, or leaving a mark within pop culture by making a movie no one ever thought could even work. In other words, be a visionary. I was so relieved in recognizing James's visual essence under the reverence understandably coming from making a Superman film. Now what you need to get is that my summer was spent with the Suicide Squad as background noise, with me praying for Superman to somewhat mimic what felt to me as pretty visually adequate for the project. The sharp deep focus on those splash page type shots, the aggressive highlights literally brightening my day, the color grade even, which is controversial apparently. Anyways, I'm just glad to see all the things I enjoy from those recent Gunn-Braham collaborations which people saw and thought, oh, like The Flash 2023. I guess that's what the Suicide Squad gets for coming out in 2021 and not pushed back year after year after year into recency for people to better recall and for all the wrong reasons. I can't deny the similarities. I'm afraid Henry having a visual signature won't help him in beating the Flash allegations, but I think James's more refined direction guarantees Superman's worst shot to look better than the Flash's best. I don't even recall the practical cinematography being the main cause of slander. It's competently shot, the lighting's sharp, the color pops out well, especially his yellow hoodie, skin is actually given texture, good subject to background separation, actual depth. It's basically not suffering from all the recent symptoms of digital cinema. It doesn't look like... I'm sorry? A Snyder shot Snyder film. Or Wicked. It looks fine. Pretend for a second that he's not being played by a creepypasta and try telling me that this is a bad looking shot. Maybe looking like the Flash would have been complimentary if most of the picture wasn't butchered by questionable VFX, leaving poor Henry to mostly shine during those dialogue scenes whenever not shot in the Oasis from Ready Player One. The Flash, directed by Andy Muschietti, looks fine for the 5 scenes they actually shot with a camera. Where else are you gonna hear Flash praise? I'm not even praising the Flash, I'm praising the cinematographer who chose to lock in despite working on a sinking ship. I'm not here for Henry's work to be associated with intrinsic badness. I say we fix that. On-location shooting. We're lucky that James's craft comes with a good amount of practical sets, making whatever fictitious setting feel authentic, tangible. We're going back to doing one of the few things that Superman Returns did right, being building most of that world from the ground up for nearly every set to scream Superman as much as they can, recognizable not just by label but by essence. You just might have to use every aspect of the mise-en-scène to better clarify that, showing that there's more to production value than abundant VFX. It's also wardrobe attention given to every extra. Not a single prop or person left without having a part in serving that modern retro charm. Everything matters, from the filing cabinet, the choice of desks, the lamp, to this jar of peanut butter. Lived in. The production design's coming in to save those frames from looking too clean, empty as what the fan film people claim this to look like. I assume it's the color, the enthusiasm, the sincerity of that magnitude not often seen from this sort of project nowadays, but mostly it's the color, apparently too much for many to handle, maybe giving this one a nice spot in the category of blockbusters deemed ugly for daring to venture into some visual extremes. What choice was there at this point? Aesthetic boldness becomes one of the few remaining ways for people to better see the point in rehashing a character or a story, and for it to better distinguish itself from the rest of the pile. Now we're drawing the line at giving your shadows a bit of a tint. People died in its Speed Racer directed by the Wachowski sisters. Maybe conservatism really is rising within Gen Z because now they're coming for color on film. West Side Story flopping makes all the sense all of a sudden. A lot of ungrateful fools out there wouldn't handle the average Bay film, unaware of the fact that he might have been the best at what he did. We used to be a proper country. Then it's the apparent shame in actually translating a comic book to film, which James has none of. The realism versus whimsy in comic book films debate is still going on strong, and it's keeping us as a collective from tapping into the fun we once knew as children. The divergence in reactions to a cape-wearing superdog jumping into frame really encapsulates our nation's divide. Wasn't from the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy title card good enough a warning for all the James Gunnisms? Perhaps even having more of a place than ever before. Have a peek at those early action comic covers and realize that Superman movies from Donner to Snyder have always been ridiculously grounded, either due to budget, VFX limitation, restraint, or simple cynicism. With technology having caught up, there no longer are any excuses. If anything's stopping anyone from capturing that wacky essence, it's repression. Get over it and have Superman fight a kaiju. Thanks. Subpar execution could have the concept go to waste, but James proved giant monsters to be one of his stronger suits, and now here we are. I know we're dealing with half a second of a shot, but I was easily transported back to Pacific Rim just from how that thing moves. I'm referring to the creature's motion emulating a giant suit rather than a slab of creature CG.
I wanted to think how a man in a suit would fit in there.
Convincing and confidently shown once again in broad daylight, and when was anything ever too colorful for James to put on screen? The starfish looking like a giant gummy didn't stop him from making it feel like an existential threat with its boldly strange color scheme and doing it yet again. Blue lasers of death are so 2016. Tentacular hamster ball of doom is where it's at. Despite how visually uncanny and nonsensical the concept is, I can already tell they successfully took on that aesthetic challenge, giving whatever that thing is a convincingly mesmerizing presence, choosing to set the scene at nighttime for its lights to better reflect onto the cityscape's surfaces. Saturated pink and green is an insane choice, but it's on brand. There might not be a more comic book-esque visual than colorful tendrils doing chaos, but James's fondness for the gimmick gives him this ease in aestheticizing it for the big screen after decades of us being denied that side of comic books on film. Really makes you get how aiming for realism might have gotten in the way of things. You just know that his Watchmen wouldn't have been lacking in giant squids. We've been taught as adults to cringe at the wrong things, and James took on this ongoing mission to help us unlearn that unfortunate reflex through cinematic earnestness, giving a comic book loving kid's crayon scribbles a Hollywoodian budget. He's doing it again and it's scaring the masses. Mind keeping a secret? I kinda miss the Snyder aesthetic. Yeah, the Greek mythological seasoning from Larry Fong's expressionist capturing of things to Michael Wilkinson's costume design with the suit being built as this extension of Cavill's godlike physiognomy. I miss both Hans and Tom matching it all via score. The more curvy, alien take on Krypton nearly had me think you couldn't top this in terms of illustrating the world of Superman for modern audiences. Vibe-wise, perfect. This sequence is my favorite looking thing that came out of the DCEU. Less the part with the space demons and more the part where Superman's mean mugging Batman. You can feel the dust in the air. It's tangibly gorgeous and we'll never see something like this again because Snyder came out as a control freak and it is a sad and ugly watch. Snyder Fong DCEU, you will be missed. On the other hand, I find this to be just as appealing despite seeming like a complete 180 from what I just referred to. To those wondering why these shots aren't getting as much flack for being muted like the so-hated Cavill color grade, consider those likely being instances of the filmmaking matching a scene's emotion rather than a tonal and aesthetic default. It can't always be sunshine and rainbows. This isn't Paddington. I especially find this shot kinda clever, using that clean reflective diagonal surface for it to almost resemble a Dutch angle. It's very J.J. Abrams. The battered suit also looks as good on screen as I expected. Precisely the textural lighting to costume synergy I was hoping to see recaptured by Gunn's crew. I'm really digging this. I still don't get the hate for the seams. Not only do I find them essential for the suit's overall presence, but in this shot I'm under the impression that those are supposed to emulate the diagonal crystal formations, turning them into a clothing motif for patterns to be worn as a cultural extension of Krypton's aesthetic identity. I can already tell that the suit's gonna look best framed by the fortress or anything Krypton. I can't be the only one seeing the vision. Regardless, I'm just glad that we're back to growing crystal houses. Come to think of it, dropping what made Krypton so iconic as an alien planet to think it anew was a bold move, but also kind of insane, I don't know. This is a chance at seeing those old-timey Superman visuals given a modern flair from crystals to Krypton's retrofuturism with this guy serving Nuketown. I was starting to think that we'd never see another Superman movie that actually committed to being a Superman movie. I have enough of a trust in James's understanding of the material and general writing skills to create one of the rare successful attempts at handling this many superpowered elements by seemingly portraying them as normalized within that world, each given a unique and fitting part to serve as a good film, a good Superman story at its corniest and all for the better. People express having this aversion to camp, but it's gonna be pretty embarrassing recognizing some familiar faces at the pre-premiere, sharing your excitement except pretending not to. We were on the verge of losing the plot in regards to what Superman even is about, and I'll scapegoat the fancy VFX at our disposal, allowing us to convincingly blow things up or flip buildings for our entertainment without the same inclination to aestheticize rescuing people from set explosions. Meanwhile, he's looking cute for the camera as the casualty number increases off screen. Saving the woman from falling out of a helicopter was all we had, so they valued it, birthing a popular motif repeated several times and famously subverted. There was this brief moment in the subgenre's modern era where that value was still given to the rescue motif, making it look the best it ever did. I thought that was over, left to be a thing of the past. I was wrong. Love to see it. Glad to see James earning this project, having spent his whole career pretty much honing his style to be the most suitable for comic book filmic purposes, using film to emulate the vibrance and kinetics of a comic book as was done 20 years ago, 40 years ago, and yet this feels like a Superman film made as if there never were prior attempts to either subvert or as a reference to submit to. Forget about Donner. Back to the 60s we go. The Silver Age, as James specifically recalls, and not as a nostalgia-motivated tactic, but as a strong signaler of pride and earnest interest in regards to the material at hand. It's undeniably Superman, but it's also something else. Just what I need. In other words, we're back.